The red carpet ran from the parking lot into a rehabbed warehouse washed in Edison bulbs. I cleared the check-in gate with a VIP wristband the PR team snapped on me, more leash than invitation. Fresh paint still hung in the air, tangled with BBQ sliders and Prosecco, that success scent my mother likes fogged over every photo. On the lobby LED, a family legacy, reels sprinted from the days, my father launched his first security firm to the moment my sister cut a ribbon on this one. I'd been edited out like my deployments in the Middle East were a rendering glitch. A local reporter asked if I felt proud of the family being this united. I laughed, and half the laugh stalled in my throat. The PR crew moved like a parade unit, tugging jackets, setting angles, fixing a stray hair on my sister. When I tried to slide in to say congrats, my mother materialized like a knife. "Sweetheart, come with me." Her hand on my elbow looked affectionate enough for the room and firm enough to be in order. Backstage lived behind a velvet curtain, cold perfume and fresh paper. On the table, a perfectly squared folder, a fountain pen laid at a 45-degree angle like it was in a catalog. My mother didn't circle. "Sign your grandfather's shares over. We need a unified image. Investors hate family conflict." Her voice wasn't high or low, it was lake flat before a wind and I could hear the undercurrent. I touched the folder's edge, slick like fish scales. Granddad left those to me, not to us. I kept it low enough to dodge the PR mics outside, loud enough to cut off my own exit. She smiled the fundraiser smile, worn smooth by years of galas. "You're tired. Transitioning out of the army makes you sensitive. Sign, then come cut the ribbon with your sister." In my bag, my unit coin scraped my keys, thin metal music. I thought of Gray Fox, the colonel who set a hand on my shoulder the day I etzed and repeated what he'd told me the first week we met. Public truth, then silence. He'd sent me a log before he died, checksummed 6 ways. I hadn't fully opened it, but I knew it was there the way you know a chart sits under cloud. "Why the rush?" I asked. She glanced at the curtain where stage lights flickered. "Because this is a family moment, and because in here everything follows the script." She slid the folder closer, tapping a metronome with her finger. My name glared up in bold. The letters stood like a squad on the line. No. 2 syllables hit the wood floor louder than I planned. The curtain breathed, someone walked by, then stilled. Air tightened. She tipped her head, the smile switched off. "You have no idea what you're doing." "I know exactly," I said, keeping level. "And I have something that will make everyone else understand." I didn't mean to say it out loud, but once it left, it was a flare. Her eyes flashed steel. She stepped in close enough for the marble-cold perfume to bloom. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm reminding you," I said. "What happens if you push me to the edge?" The slap was fast and clean, muscle memory from a life of face control. No shout, no knocked-over chair. Just the dry report of skin on skin and a hot stripe unfurling across my left cheek. For a split second, I wasn't an adult or a soldier. I was the kid in the kitchen corner watching my mother straighten the knives and then straighten her daughter to fit the frame. I didn't step back. I didn't raise a hand. I exhaled once long, the way a helicopter sounds when the rotor winds down. "I'm not signing." I switched to I to draw the border. The door cracked. A security guard poked in and froze under the pressure in the room. My mother turned, setting the pen dead center like a nail. "You will," she said, "when you understand what can turn you into a stranger in your own story." I almost laughed, but the corner of my mouth only twitched. "I've been a stranger in your story for a long time." I picked up my bag. The coin kissed the keys again. I walked out of that cold perfume room, past the red carpet where flashes still popped, past the cocktail bar where the bartender asked if I wanted another. I shook my head. I needed my hands free. The main hall thundered. The LED hit the Honoring Our Troops segment and blew my father's old flight suit photo up to half a wall. The MC cued applause. It went on long, even hollow, like rain on a backyard canopy. I stood at the edge and watched faces tilt to the light like they were watching 4th of July fireworks. No frame for me, no lower third. I congratulated myself for dodging that edit. Outside, Miami night wind cut across the lot. The valet pretended not to see me until I said his name off his badge. My car slid up. I climbed in and shut the door like a lid, sealing the noise outside the glass. I dropped the bag on the passenger seat and woke the burner phone. One notification lit the dark from a no-name address. A message as compact as an op order. "Checksum valid. He wanted you to have it." In the mirror, the red smear had cooled to heat. I didn't reply. I turned the key. set my hands on the wheel the way I used to lay them along a rifle. Light, locked. Behind me, applause kept pulsing in rhythm, on cue. Inside the car, my heart kept different time. And if something had to blow, I'd choose when, I'd choose where, and I'd make sure the first thing into the light was the truth. Then I'd go quiet. The main hall was noon bright, though it was late. Haze machines sweetening the air, while LEDs bounced off steel columns, until everything gleamed like a knife fresh off the stone. I headed back to the check-in desk. Remembered I'd left an envelope there with our evidence preservation plan, the one thing I didn't want the family PR crew pawing at. The receptionist watched me for a heartbeat that felt like a metronome, then put on the customer service smile. "We'll check the VIP area." One moment. It was the kind of smile designed to close a door while calling it help. I stopped in front of the glass wall they'd just installed, a shrine to family legacy. Trophies, plaques, photos of my sister shaking hands with the photo-friendly. Centered was my father's old medal in a dark wood frame, the pane polished so clean it felt like nothing stood between me and a carefully curated past. I looked closer to confirm what I already knew. No unit coin of mine, no photo of me, not a single duty tag from the nights I sat behind a thermal screen calling lines for a squad halfway around the world. The wall worked like a mirror that wouldn't reflect. I stood there and disappeared. The PR manager floated by like a push notification, loud enough for everyone. "We're going live again. Remember to say family legacy." My sister's eyes slid across me and stalled for half a beat before she turned to the lens and smiled a smile with no space for me in it. A camera op raised his gimbal. The frame skimmed over me the way wind skims a lake. No ripple, no record. A young server passed with a trembling tray of champagne. He paused, lowered his voice. "Ma'am, I saw you looking for your keys." I read his name off the pin on his vest, set it back, and for the first time all night found an actual human face. He fished an old key ring from his apron, my car keys, and a quartered scrap of paper. "Camera dead zone, B2 West Corner." I nodded but didn't smile. I wasn't about to hand him a smile that could cost him his job. My burner buzzed. A gray Fox voicemail surfaced in notes, synced ages ago, now playing itself like he'd timed it. His voice was sandpaper smooth. "Public truth, then silence. If they force you to perform, step off stage. Evidence first, not feelings." The calm in it buckled me into place. I long press saved it for offline, old habit from the days we trusted nothing with a signal. The receptionist reappeared with my envelope, tape still sealed. "Found it in VIP. Sorry for the delay." I took it, thanked her the exact amount required, and checked the tape with my eyes. No lift marks. When I turned, a security guard blocked the valet window, half a head taller than me. "Sorry, management says your vehicle stays temporarily." Temporarily is how you say not now and maybe never with a tie on. "Could you call the manager?" I asked. "I just need to leave." He glanced at his radio, then studied me like a fire exit map mounted upside down. I didn't argue. Arguing inside their ecosystem is volunteering to be background noise. I cut through the hall toward the side door where vendors staged. A "We Support Our Troops" poster hung over an overfull trash can, too on the nose to decide if it was irony or Dacre. Back corridor, AC humming. I tucked under a camera cone, unzipped my bag, checked the unit coin USB. Still there. A blade-thin SD card too, screenshots of contracts, my mother's e-signature on an addendum. I shot fresh photos of the metadata and pushed them to the one-way inbox David built, subject line exactly. "Chain of custody, step 1. A ghosted checkmark appeared a minute later. No emoji, no nice work. In this line, silence means received. I followed the kid's note to the B2 West Corner, a pocket of dark where the sodium bulbs were dying, a tide of old gasoline and sea salt in the air. I tossed my bag on the passenger seat and sat still, hands just off the wheel. In the mirror, the slap mark had cooled, my eyes had not. I pulled my primary phone, popped the SIM, snapped it in two. It clinked into the cup holder like a coin into a well. Burner to airplane mode. Bluetooth off. Wi-Fi off. GPS offline, maps only, muscle memory for the kind of night that eats people. Out the windshield, the lot shifted. A black SUV backed out 3 spaces over, settled, headlights off, parking lights pulsing like a patient blink. I didn't stare, just watched its corners through the glass. On the seat, my coin slid and ticked against my key ring. That little sound sharpened me better than caffeine. I pinged David on the encrypted app. Possible tail. Changing route. Sop. 10 seconds and it came back. No home, no friends, go public place, swap car if possible, radio silent unless urgent. I set the phone down. The way David writes is a thin shield enough to remind me someone's on my flank. I rolled out slow, eased over a rise, ducked into a toll kiosk and bought a new transponder with cash. The black SUV drifted along at a courteous distance. I didn't speed up. Tails want you panicked. I let my training sit in the passenger seat, eyes on mirrors, ears on engine, breath steady. The radio poured candy pop about brighter tomorrows. I clicked it off. I needed to hear the tires talk to the asphalt. Crossing a river bridge, a side wind slapped the car and I corrected like I was still on a helicopter in my head, nose steady through the chop. A 24-hour gas station sign pulsed like a temporary safe lane. I pulled in by the squeegees. White light spilled over the concrete, flattening shadows. I climbed out slow, counted 3 breaths, and bent to the pump so their cameras got a full, clean shot of my face. I wanted the trail, just not the one they controlled. The SUV idled 2 lots down, no blinker. I didn't look at it. I asked the cashier if there was a restroom. She pointed. I looped inside, peeled my jacket into the trash, left the gray hoodie underneath. In the mirror, I scraped my hair up, watched my own face harden half a shade. Cold water on the cheek muted what was left of the heat. Back at the counter, I bought a prepaid SIM and 2 waters, shoved them deep in my pocket. The SUV revved, then fell quiet. Night wind picked up. I strapped in. The burner screen glowed, no new pings from David, just Gray Fox's voicemail at the top of the list like a finger pointing forward. I hit play and let his voice fill the cabin. Evidence first. I nodded whether he could see me or not. I slipped out, signaling a hair late to test the reflex in my rear view. 2 firefly dots floated there, holding my speed like rain clinging to glass. I drew a deeper breath, lanes ahead spreading into 2 black ribbons. Up in the sky, a plane sank toward the airport, metal lightning bugs with destinations. Mine was simpler. Find bright enough light to force shadows to show their faces. If they wanted to enter the story, they'd have to step into the beam. The tires thumped a seam in the road. The 2 dots stuck. I said nothing. I fed the throttle, just enough, until the line between us stretched like a fishing line. And when it's tight enough, I'll set the hook. The highway unspooled like a black river, neon storefronts flickering with dead letters, palm trees spiked into the median like tired sentries. 2 lights held behind me, polite distance, stubborn pace. A reminder that even off-stage, someone still wanted me performing. I kept it steady. No brake taps, no cat and mouse, just the even rhythm they drill into you for night shoots. At the last second, I signaled hard into a delivery lane outside a strip mall, slipping into a line of box trucks. The SUV had a choice, show itself or drift past. It drifted. I let my shoulders drop just a notch. The outer burbs breathed gasoline, cheap pizza, and 24-hour detergent. I slid into a parking lot big as a dry lake, sodium lamps pouring sickly gold across the concrete. I backed beside a stack of waiting containers, cut the engine, and sat still, counting 30 heartbeats before I cracked the door. Night wind ran a cool hand over my cheek. I made 3 calls. 3 different voices gave me the same polite answer. "I'm sorry, Morgan, now's not great, your dad might, maybe later." Nobody said his name. It slipped out like a sandbar that makes people change course. I wasn't angry. Fear is a survival skill, like knowing when to duck. I found a motel tucked behind a used car lot, the red neon sign missing half its bulbs. At the counter, an old man watched a rerun game with his eyes open and his attention elsewhere. Cash, driver's license, ground floor room facing the lot. He slid the key over with 2 fingertips. The room smelled like bleach and damp carpet. The AC coughed like a smoker. The TV laughed on tape. I threw the deadbolt, drew the curtains, checked the lights in the ceiling corner. No camera, just a rusted sprinkler staring like a lazy eye. The mattress sank like a soft trap when I sat. I palmed my unit coin, twisted off the metal shell, and the slim USB throat winked back. Plugged it in. 1 breath in, 1 held, 1 let go. The drive mounted with a heartbeat, G-Fox. Inside, 3 folders labeled like radio calls, last brief, ledger, echo. I opened last brief. A PDF bloomed in his hand, Gray Fox's slanted letters, checkboxes threaded between orders. A final to-do list written by someone who knew he was running out of time. If you're reading this, they've pushed you into a play you didn't audition for. The notes jumped cities, shell companies, dates that made a pattern only if you'd spent years watching men try to scrub their footprints and track their perfume instead. Ledger was worse. It didn't shout, it ticked. Transfers in twinned amounts that separated, looped, and came back wearing new names, money doing a parade route. The arrows dead-ended at a community fund where my mother sat on a dais and smiled into lights that love a good cause. Round-tripping. Wash, rinse, repeat. I stared out at the strip of lot visible through the curtain seam. Somewhere out there, patience idled. I took a photo of the folder tree and the basic metadata, no content, then opened the encrypted app and sent it to David's one-way box with the subject line, Chain of Custody, Step 1. The ghost checkmark arrived, quiet as a nod, our best version of a hand on a shoulder saying, with you. The motel manager knocked with a receipt coil like a shed snakeskin. I asked him to initial my check-in time. He peered at me longer than strangers usually do, like he could see the scaffolding under my skin, then signed, ink-feathered but honest. We built a clean perimeter. I logged the room conditions, sodium light spill, AC noise, the exact time according to my watch. I documented the drive mount, the hash, the actions taken, the actions not taken. I heard Gray Fox in my head. Procedure is how you remember in court what fear makes you forget at night. When the app chimed, it wasn't David. It was memory wearing his voice, the day on the glass line when we'd caged an insider. Hear anything? He'd asked. Nothing, I'd said. Good, he'd grinned. Hearing silence is a life skill. Back then he'd tapped his coin to mine metal on metal and said, service isn't a brand, it's a promise, not viral, bone deep. I paced the room once to bleed off the electric hum in my muscles and opened Echo just long enough to confirm it was audio, then closed it. No eating dessert before a patrol. Back to Ledger. 3 contracts no one could find on Google, each pointing to a logistics company with a ghost address, then back to the fund. The same hand pressing the same key at the same intervals, habit visible in numbers. I drew a timeline in my notebook, dates, arrows, tiny red stars where it pinched. When I laid the pen down, my phone vibrated against the Gideon Bible in the drawer. A message from an unknown number. Stop, Morgan. Don't lose your family twice. I stared until the screen dimmed. The AC coughed again. Down the hall, a toilet hissed. I clicked the lamp off and the room took the shape of a quiet I know. Before raids, after funerals, in the downbeat between one order and the next. I texted David one line, evidence present, imaging next. Then I slid the coin back into its shell, set both palms flat on the cheap desk, and let my breath even out. Exfil isn't just getting out. It's getting out with what you came for, and with yourself intact. Morning poured through the motel blinds like thin silk, turning the room into a yellow tank of sodium light. I made instant coffee with warm tap water, the metallic comfort of a night guard shift. The unit coin USB blinked once on the table, a tiny fish heart in a cheap aquarium. I opened Ledger and read Gray Fox's notes. Arrowheads, checkboxes, 3 shell companies named like minor league ball clubs. Amounts traveled in pairs, split, rejoined like tire tracks someone tried to scrub, money in, money out, money back under a new alias, all of it drifting toward a community fund where my mother sat as honorary chair. I called David on the encrypted app. No ring, just connected. We spoke in short sentences, stowing feelings the way you stow a rifle at the gate. I described surfaces only, no raw files. David said he was coming with 2 people, a former Marine PI and an Air Force-trained forensic accountant. We do this by the book from step 1, he said. Image the drive, compute checksums, log every action, sign each step, so if we ever end up in front of a judge, procedure can't be the round that kills us. While I waited, I policed my area for anything that could turn into shrapnel, receipts, bottle caps, sticky notes, logged the time in a notebook, sketched a timeline with a ballpoint, marked the tight places with small X's. The motel manager knocked and handed over a receipt roll long as a shed snakeskin. I thanked him and asked him to initial my check-in time from last night. He looked at me a beat like he recognized the scaffolding under my skin, then signed, ink-feathered, honest. David showed in a pressed gray shirt, hair still military short but softer, carrying the weather of someone who knows how to walk through a storm without getting wet. With him, the pie, compact as a fence post, and the forensic accountant, a small woman behind thin glasses whose movements were as precise as an anemometer. No lingering handshakes, just nods. Then we started. David laid a clean towel on the desk, set out a camera, pens, tamper-evident bags, and labels. The accountant plugged in, spun up the imaging tool, and read strings of characters like a cardiologist calling out a heart rhythm. The PI photographed corners, outlets, the position of objects. Not one extra word. "I'll read each step out loud," David said, and he did. Time, action, who did it? I asked him to add room conditions, light spill, room orientation, the AC's cough. Not poetry, hooks to hang truth on later. When the software finished, the hash appeared. The accountant recited the full string like a prayer. I signed the log, David signed, they signed. The original went into an anti-static bag and clicked shut. Then I told them about Gray Fox, the parts a file can't hold. How he entered a room, set his ball cap down like a flag, counted the quiet before saying anything important. I remembered a sun-punched day on the glass line, red dust on our boots, him posting me behind one-way glass while a suspected insider pressed his lips thin. "Hear anything?" he asked. "Nothing," I said. "Good," he grinned. Hearing silence is a life skill. The first time he tapped his coin to mine, metal on metal, he said, "Service is not a brand, it's a promise." I told him it wouldn't go viral. He shrugged. "Doesn't have to. It just has to stick to your bones." This morning he showed up in slanted ink with a few deliberate typos to booby-trap forgers. He'd drawn arrows from a security hardware contract to a logistics company with no real address, then back into that community fund where my mother once cut a ribbon smiling into lights that love good deeds. I breathed slow so anger could pass like a heavy freight train without popping the rails. David listened, no consolations, just short marks in his notebook. "We need a reporter outside the hometown orbit," he said. "National security beat, not from this city." He gave a name strong enough to make check writers recheck the numbers. I nodded. "But we follow Gray Fox's rule," I said. "Public truth, then silence." David smiled thin. "Then that's the op name." I rolled my coin in my palm. "Protocol silence." He nodded like a hammer finding a nail. The PI took the physical trail, where the gear landed, who signed, which camera conveniently died. The accountant sketched a groundwater map of cache, arrows under the surface. "We'll need a server snapshot before anyone rewrites history," she said. "I can pull a lawful temp copy through an old partner." David swept the line. "Stay inside the law, we win on process, not tricks." I heard Gray Fox again. "The shortest line through a storm is straight, zigzags attract lightning." The reporter joined by video, a wall of clippings pinned with red tacks behind him. He listened, promised nothing beyond 2 words. "Send files." I asked, "Do you protect sources?" He crooked a smile. "I protect the story by protecting its sources. No source, no story." We set the cadence. 0700 publish, 10:00 a short briefing with documents, then radio silence. No feelings debates, just let the artifacts walk on their own legs. We stepped out for air at noon. The lot was white-hot, plastic off-gassing in waves. The PI showed me a nighttime shot from B2, half a face under a windshield. "Not a hobbyist," he said. "They're patient, won't press." I asked if we should swap cars. David said, "Yes, but not today. Today they think we're busy arguing. We don't argue, we write." By late afternoon, the room had warmed. The accountant tiled the wall with sticky notes, company names, contract ID, account numbers. She read digits like a tough passage of music until the tune locked. "There's a rhythm," she said, tapping 3 identical disbursements offset by the same interval. "An internal metronome. Somebody likes even strokes." I looked up and saw the pulse of the story, habit on one side, the relentlessness of numbers on the other. He bundled a temporary packet for the reporter. The accountant paused, leaned into the screen, nudged her glasses. "This transfer," she whispered, "executes at 06:58 on the morning of the event." David looked up. "Right before doors," he said. "Someone wanted it done before the cameras woke." Gooseflesh ticked down my arms, a cold draft in a room where the AC only knows how to cough. 06:58, a cut mark in hardwood, not up for debate. The 3 of us looked at each other, each mapping a different gear in the clock that had just revealed itself. Gray Fox rolled under the noise floor. "Evidence first." I nodded, uncapped a red pen, and drew an arrow on the wall from 06:58 to the backstage room that smelled like cold perfume. The line passed through an invisible zone, my mother's palm landing on my cheek and her ink on an addendum. The story had started telling itself. My job was to stay quiet long enough for it to finish. I left the motel before the heat set its teeth. hands on the wheel the way you cinch a Kevlar chin strap, running the route David sent, day-use rendezvous that vanish like FOBs after a drawdown. At a coffee joint beside an old warehouse, the PI slid a stack of inkjet photos across the table like it was 2006, and the cloud hadn't swallowed evidence yet. Plates filmed with road dust, a peel-off sticker from a logistics company that only exists on paper, and a pair of rubber gloves dropped by a back gate in the dark, the kind used by cleanup crews or people allergic to leaving DNA. They move the hardware through a way station, he said, tapping a frame, then bend the paperwork toward a shell. Westlot camera went dark for one perfect stretch, like somebody blinked. The forensic accountant laid a hand-drawn flow on the table, black arrows linking names scrubbed clean by Google. Each arrow passed a tiny box with amounts, then everything dumped into one rectangle. A community fund with my mother's name embossed as honorary chair. Round-tripping, she said. Money leaves, returns, gets a new label, new cent. Her finger stopped on a number that looked harmless. This one timestamps to 06:58 that morning, internal metronome. She didn't smile. Numbers don't need charisma to win. David arrived last with a gallon Ziploc full of order. Labels, pens, a body cam, chain of custody forms. He read the room into the record. Location, time, personnel, light conditions, ambient noise, like turning the world down to a manageable volume. 3 layers of verification, he said. Technical, financial, human. When they intersect, the story is publish grade. His look was commander and teammate in one. We don't argue feelings. We hand over documents and go quiet. The reporter answered our email with a desert dry list fit for a courtroom. Provenance, handling who touched what and where. It made me think of Gray Fox reading checklists like scripture. I wrote back line by line, attached chain of custody entries and process photos. In the motive field, I typed a sentence, deleted it, typed another, deleted again. I left 3 words, military promise broken. By noon, we moved to an empty rental bay to rehearse the briefing. David set up a folding table and stacked 3 piles, technical imaging, money flow, procedure logs. We release these 3 and stop, he said. No childhood, no family drama. If they ask, why now? You say because procedure is complete. If they ask, do you regret this? You say I'm choosing process over impulse. I nodded. Somewhere in my throat, the unit coin tapped an invisible tooth. Outside, the PI sketched a compass on the asphalt. Wind, sun, ingress, egress, media parking, standoff range. He pointed out the dark corner where a skulker could lurk and the bright arc where a skulker has to show his face. Never forget, light is a weapon, he said. Anonymous hates light the way liars hate system logs. By afternoon, the motel room was a war room again. Walls cross-hatched with sticky notes and red arrow rivers. The accountant tunneled into a lawful temp snapshot through an old partner. Contractual read-only access. Terminal window black, letters white, timestamps ticking like a heart monitor. She pointed at a segment where admin logins marched with elegant regularity, until a new fingerprint popped in, toggled permissions on a folder, and ghosted out like it was never there. Technical gloves on, she said, but the time habit leaks. We bundled a proof pack, disk images with hashes, location photos, the cash flow map, lawful log excerpts, and a plain language methods memo. David audited it page by page the way an NCO inspects a rifle, no scuff overlooked. If a juror reads this, he said, their hands should feel like they're touching a physical object. I thought about my mother's hand on my cheek, how the heat has cooled to the memory of sunburn. Facts are cold. Truth is, too. Night came, a thin film on the window. We fixed the cadence. Day 8:07:00, the investigation goes live. 10:00, we brief and hand out the 3 stacks. Then radio silence, true to Gray Fox's order of operations. The PI would sit where he could see the lot. The reporter would manage his own source hygiene. David would hold a line to PD if anyone tried to turn the briefing into theater. I'd deliver one short statement, a memo to myself and to anyone hunting for a soft spot. I'm not here for a family story. I'm here for integrity of process. Before we tore down, I opened Echo, the colonel's last audio, long enough to let one line roll through the room, tires humming on runway. Sometimes the only way to love your family is to stop acting in their script. I killed the file and let the silence do what advice can't, make room for my own breathing. The burner buzzed. The reporter, draft headline ready. I read 4 words and locked my screen. No eating breakfast the night before. Sleep on the hard part. Let the morning sharpen it. The encrypted app flashed a red dot. A courtesy invite to a one-time inbox. Subject line, private conversation. From my father's assistant. Polite as a board memo. Country club, just the 2 of us, no press. Keep it in the family. I stared at the word family like it was a sepia photograph I was supposed to find comforting. The PI raised an eyebrow. David shook his head. The accountant said nothing. I screenshotted it into evidence. Legal trap, David murmured. And an emotional one, I said. I set the coin in my palm. Cool metal, nicked by years of pockets and duffels. I closed my hand until the edge bit. Let the coin say what my mouth might not. I'm not walking into a room where the script is finished and my only line is sign. If they want a meeting, they can step into daylight and stand beside documents that don't scare. South Florida night exhaled outside. I hit the lights and let the dark pull itself up like a blanket. Tomorrow we ship the proof pack. The day after, we run the brief drill one last time. And when it's time, the story will carry itself on numbers, photos, logs, signatures. I just have to take one step back like Gray Fox taught me and keep my silence. Morning hit the city like a metal box yanked from the fridge, cold breath, sweat beating along the rim. I was up early, folded the gray hoodie, slipped my unit coin into the inner pocket, and double-knotted my laces the way we learned for sprinting out of an empty house outside Kandahar. After days of serving as a war room, the motel looked tidy again, like a kitchen scrubbed of every knife. We left nothing but faint tape shadows on the walls and the familiar cough of the AC. I opened the burner and typed David a short email. Systems green. If I go missing, you know your part. I checked my watch. 0650. On the drive to the rental space we'd turned into a briefing room, the PI rode shotgun, watching mirrors more than road. 2 tails, 3 cars back, he said, voice flat like he was reading a checklist. I didn't ask for color. SOP. No confrontation, no theatrics, just heard them somewhere bright. David called too brief to count as a conversation, long enough to hear his pen tap a folder. On time, he said. On time. A text from the reporter flashed. Everything locked, 321. I drew a lungful that felt heavy. Gray Fox in my head, evidence before emotion, like a hard hat before a chemical bay. Somewhere across town, the finger about to hit publish had never met me in person. All we shared was faith in process. The phone vibrated like a chest thump. 0700. No fireworks, no soundtrack. Just a volley of notifications. The outlet's name, a desert dry headline, a link long and cold as a needle. Within a minute, investor accounts started schooling like fish slipping into shade, tagging. What's this? And a second link, the proof pack summary, followed by a single question mark. Outside the windshield, a pool toy store rolled its gate early. Pink neon floats hung in the air like self-inflated stories. David texted. Good, no comment. The forensic accountant dropped a screenshot. On a partner's internal network, someone was frantically editing an old FAQ. In real life, no one notices FAQ edits. Today, every edit looked like ink wicking across a blotter. The more you rub, the worse it shows. The PI pinged position. 2 tails still on, swapping drivers at lights like a drill. Let M. David said over speaker. We want them present when the lights come up. We reached the rental, an open box with whitewashed brick and tall panes bleeding daylight. David unfolded a table dead center and set 3 stacks. Technical imaging, money flow, procedure logs. No backdrop, no logo, no banner. I watched my watch and reset my breathing. 4 sentences, no more. Each one sanded clean of anger and pride, so only the weight of verified process remained. Reporters came in like a flock, each with their own feathered machine. Cameras, mics, cans, questions hovering. We checked ID, handed packets, and inked the receipt log. The PI posted by the door where the light hit hard, turning everyone who crossed it into a crisp silhouette. The accountant locked the checksums again, the way a rigger pulls on a harness strap just before liftoff. Shoes knocked concrete. Folding chairs creaked. Flash bulbs ticked like underwater firecrackers. I stepped up. My voice came out dry, not hoarse, cold water after a long night. I'm Morgan. I'm a former counterintelligence officer. Today we're providing evidence and procedure. No comment on family. Hand on stack 1. Disk images with hashes and a complete chain of custody. Stack 2. Money flow diagrams reconciled to accounts and a 0658 transfer on the morning of the event. Stack 3. Procedure logs detailing conditions, timing, and personnel. Half-beat pause, pen scratching. We will be silent after this briefing. A hand shot up. Message for your mother. I looked into the lens and saw my own reflection as a black dot. My message is procedure, I said. All answers are in the documents. Another hand. Afraid people will call you a traitor to your family. I slipped the coin back against my skin to catch rhythm. I serve a promise, not a commercial, I said and stepped back. The PI's look, that's enough. David closed with one line. We won't be answering further. All documents have been distributed. We depart at 10:00. He said 10:00 with the clarity of a range report, like time itself was part of the perimeter. Then, per plan, we stood still. Questions kept falling like off-season rain, hitting concrete, breaking apart, not picked up. One reporter got annoyed and filmed my face from arm's length. I kept my eyes on the white wall where the light crawled like a minute hand. My watch clicked to 10:00 and David snapped his case. We bowed a fraction, range etiquette at the end of a shoot. No handshakes, no selfies, no thanks for coming. Outside, the sun hit the lot so hard people squinted. Our two tails idled, engines even. The PI rolled first, I followed, David anchored. No one talked. Silence pressed in like fog, coding seats, wheel, wrist bones. 15 minutes later, the burner buzzed. I looked but didn't open. A chain of social pings. A major sponsor, pausing cooperation with my family's company. A politician who'd posed with my mother declaring, we stand for transparency. A stranger tagging #veteran integrity under the reporter's thread. I didn't like, share, or smirk. Their words belonged to them. My part ended when the clock flipped 07:00. Another alert slid in, sharp as a knife laid on a kitchen counter. Your mother's statement will stream live in minutes. The PI checked his mirror. David didn't turn his head. I cracked my window and let heat and hot plastic air in, the smell of an old range. I thought of the glass wall, the dry slap, the ink on the addendum. Those are display objects now outside me. Inside, only a bright, empty space and a single line from Gray Fox, public truth, then silence. I killed the ringer. The car glided through a strip of shade and back into sun. Overhead, a jet scored one straight white line, no zigzag. I pressed my palm to my pocket, felt the coin. Somewhere in this city, my mother was about to deliver a flawless sentence she believed could blot out the sky. Somewhere else, a sponsor was in a hurry-up meeting weighing pause versus terminate. I said nothing. I let the light do its job. We kept our silence like we promised. The city didn't. Since the story dropped, urgent meetings popped up like mushrooms after rain, and the family company's share price climbed down a fire escape one rung at a time. I stayed off social. David funneled only what mattered. PDF, no links, no commentary. One major sponsor wrote a single sentence, pausing all cooperation pending an independent audit. Pausing felt like a safety off, no shot yet, but the barrel pointed the right way. The board pulled an all-nighter and released a morning statement. My father suspended from his executive role during an internal review with an outside audit firm engaged. I read the firm's name and laughed without sound. It was the same outfit my father used to scare dissenters in shareholder meetings. Now the name stood on the other side of the line. David added one dry note. Self-preservation move. No contact. I nodded at a phone that couldn't see me. By noon, the PI sent a long lens set, a glass box conference room, white shirts lined up like chess pieces, the corner of my mother's handkerchief visible behind a curtain. In another frame, my sister stared down at her phone, the PR Unity bracelet from her live stream sliding loose on her wrist. The last photo caught a familiar silhouette from the B2 lot standing in the sun, back to the camera. On his phone, playing the part of a shadow on purpose. Late afternoon, the company's legal team lobbed a defamation threat at the paper, muscle memory in a crisis. The reporter forwarded it to David, who forwarded it to me, still just mute files. 2 hours later, a second document arrived. They were withdrawing the intent to file, pending independent review. A line about respecting those who served gave me chills, not the stirring kind. The kind you get when pros lace the flag into a sentence like ribbon. I let the file sit where it landed. Dusk. A strange number lit my burner. I looked at David. He tilted his head a few degrees. I picked up. My sister's voice came in dry as road dust. Morgan, can we talk? No, sis. The sentence was built to miss all soft tissue. Glass clinked somewhere behind her meeting room whine. "They're about to terminate sponsorships," she rushed. "Your shares, if you don't sign back, everything will blow and wheel." "We already blew," I said. Silence held for a few beats like a long dive. Mom isn't sleeping," she cast the line. Outside the motel window, Miami threw light like netting, each apartment its own special little family myth. "I have conditions," I said. 1. Return all money that round-tripped out of the community fund to projects that are actually community. 2. A public apology to Gray Fox and to veterans at the upcoming memorial. 3. Turn over complete server logs to the audit team. No scrubbing, no edits. I kept my voice dead level. I wanted to hear myself reading a checklist. She exhaled, the line shivering. "You're making us the villain on stage," she said, steering feeling to the high ground. "No," I said, "I'm just pulling the curtain so the audience can see who's standing there." A door opened on her end, heels clicked. She lowered her voice. "You know Mom won't apologize." "Then pick what's left," I said. "Return the money and hand over the logs. I don't need words, I need acts." I hung up before she could bargain a discount. Night pinched in. The motel room seemed smaller. David slid a fresh stack across the table. Requests for a private, within the family sit-down from their attorneys. Letters fretting about my mental health. The classic attempt to saw at credibility. "No response," David said. "Agreed," I said. It felt like we were on a rickety boardwalk over a marsh, every step squishing, but the wind blew straight and I was done walking back to the old shore. Next morning, the news came like a squall line. A second sponsor didn't pause, they cut. A board member resigned for personal reasons. The paper ran part 2, a clean piece on 0658, cross-checked against a partner's logs. In a pull-quote box, they printed the checksum in full, oath you can't take back. I sat in my car and looked at the string until it felt like a mountain range, stubborn, cold, still. Then the PI's text, a leaked screenshot from internal email, my mother working with an investment bank to sell the company to a larger group. Subject line, exploring strategic options. Subhead, prefer expedited timeline. Expedited read like a helicopter skimming a lake, plenty of ripples, no change in water level. David, sell fast, pass the hot potato before the audit burns hands. The forensic accountant, they'll tuck risk into indemnities, call it restructuring costs, and migrate the mess. I leaned back and let the fake leather cool my spine. I thought of the glass wall, trophies, medals, frames, and the thick quiet lodged between me and that pain. If they sold, the wall would move to a new lobby, get wiped with industrial chemicals, hang straight again. The story wouldn't. It would keep clinging to logs, to receipts, to that long string printed in a box, and to a few strangers who read it on a Monday morning and didn't forget. Another alert. Not a deal. A board statement confirming they were evaluating strategic options, skipping any mention of returning funds or apologizing. I wrote a line in my notebook. They picked the shortcut. David watched me. "Break silence?" he asked. I shook my head. "Silence is a tactic," I said. "If we talk now, we become a prop in their PR. If we don't, the numbers keep talking." He nodded, eyes quiet. By late day, my sister texted, "Will you be at the Veterans Memorial this week?" I stared at the words, felt the coin in my pocket, saw Gray Fox clink his coin to mine, smelled dust burning off a hot range. "Yes," I wrote back. "If Mom has anything to say, she can say it there." I set the phone down and let the AC's low hiss pass for far-off rain. Outside, the city switched its lights on in clusters, like waypoints on a NITOPS map. End of day. The reporter sent one line. "We'll run part 3. I didn't ask for the angle. I closed the phone. I'd chosen silence as armor. When it's time to unbuckle it, I'll know. For now, the dominoes kept going, one neat click after another, as steady as the time habit someone left inside those logs. And at the far end of the table, a heavier tile stood. The sail. If that piece went, it would sweep half the row. I palmed my coin and closed my hand until the edge bit. Cool metal helped me keep balance in the noise. On the third morning after the storm, David slid a thick envelope across the table. No logo, no perfume, just paper and ink. He tapped it once like calling fire. Inside, a draft agreement. Return every round-tripped dollar siphoned from the community fund into the shells. Surrender full server logs to the independent audit firm. And a line I read twice before believing it. A public apology to my late mentor, the colonel we called Gray Fox, delivered at the local Veterans Memorial. No regret for any misunderstanding, no soft foam around the verbs, grounded language, do not spin. What about the sale? I asked. David flipped to the last page. Deal talks paused until the audit closed. They want to stop the reputational bleeding before they attempt surgery, he said. Names ringed the signature block like units falling into formation. 2 board members, an outside advisor, my sister. My mother's line was still blank, the empty chair at the end of a conference table. The PI pinged 2 photos. My mother stepping out of a black sedan in large sunglasses, knuckles white on a purse strap, then seated at the far end of a glass table, staring straight ahead, not glancing at the lens. She knows the wall is moving, he texted. I didn't answer. Some things don't take words. The reporter sent the link to part 3 right before he cued the presses. A piece about chain of custody, tamper bags, signatures, room light, the AC cough, the mundane details that are the spine of truth. People remember the ritual, he wrote. The ritual of integrity. I read ritual and thought of Gray Fox tipping his cap closed before he sat down, the small ceremony that reminded everyone who he carried in with him. By late afternoon, David called. They want to swap one word in the apology, he said. From apologize to acknowledge. I let a beat pass. No, I said. We've all heard acknowledge our whole lives. Today they say apologize. David chuckled softly, a metal-on-metal sound in the dark. Knew you'd say that, he said, and hung up before I could thank him for the pronoun he'd used, you as in teammate, not client. The next day, the final version landed. The ink wasn't dry before there were fingerprints. I signed, steady hand, not because I wasn't tired, but because fatigue is part of the ceremony. David signed. They signed. Somewhere in a different room, my mother signed. The PI caught the instant pen met paper. Tendons standing in her wrist, one shoulder slightly raised, the lower lid tight. A face that understands the thing about words. In the right hands they are whips, not ribbons. The memorial sat in a park by the marina. Folding chairs in tidy rows under the shadow of flags, red, white, blue bunting winking in sun. Old uniforms mingled with unit t-shirts and faded ball caps. I got there early and took the back row. My sister spotted me first, hesitated a half step, then nodded. My father walked with a legal advisor. His polished shoes reflected the sky. My mother wore darker than usual, and for the first time in years, no jewelry that shattered light. The MC read units, the anthem played, a couple kids covered their ears at a scratchy speaker. Then recognition of veteran contributions. A board representative stepped up, paper trembling in a way only the front row could see. He read, on behalf of the company, we apologize for failing to honor our promise to a man who served. Colonel Gray Fox's full name. We apologize to veterans who were placed behind other priorities. We commit to repair with action, beginning with... He listed returns, log handover. The word apologize dropped like a stone into a pond and sent round ripples outward. I looked at my shoes and wondered how far they'd travel. When the clapping folded closed, my mother rose without looking toward me. She fixed a hem, eyes on the stage. Maybe she wanted the microphone, maybe she wanted the exit. She chose her chair. I let a breath go. I didn't need her gaze to know the axis had shifted. After the ceremony, an old man in a jacket stitched with an artillery patch touched my arm. Kid, he said, voice like river stones, keep walking straight through the storm. I nodded, kept to myself that I'd been memorizing that map for a long time. My sister came closer, stopping one friendly step away. You can hate me, she said, but thank you. For what? I asked. She looked down at her hands. For making us use the right word. For the first time in this story, I smiled without feeling I'd betrayed anything. The next morning, a thin envelope arrived from the public policy program. Heavy paper, blue ink, sentences with no flourishes. I'd been accepted. A note below invited me to interview for a fellowship on veterans transitioning into cybersecurity. I called David just to read, "We are pleased to inform," out loud and hear him laugh, a short sound like a starting pistol. Go, he said. Leave the rest to us. That afternoon, I walked to the city library, a brick building with steps worn shallow by decades of shoes. Inside, the air was cool, the smell of paper and dust like an old song. I found the philosophy shelf and pulled an English Meditations. The cover was rough under my thumb. I opened to the middle and slid a small slip of paper from my pocket. 4 words, public truth, then silence. I tucked it into the gutter and closed the book, set it back. It wasn't a message to anyone. It was the period at the end of my sentence. Outside, sun winked on the white hood of the lot attendant's car. I stood in it for a minute, let the light run through me like warm water. My phone buzzed. The reporter. Case study will be taught this fall. I answered with a single dot. I didn't belong to the lecture. I belonged to what it meant. That night I sat on my temporary stoop with a laptop and a blank document titled Sentinel. First line. A fund to help veterans cross into cybersecurity, tuition support, skill mentorship, employer bridges. I wrote 3 rules: procedure before performance, action before statement, data before narrative, then stopped and listened to city night lap the walls like small waves. Somewhere my family's company was peeling the old name off a lobby wall, trying on a new brand to get through the next reporting season. Somewhere, if Gray Fox were still here, he'd sit in a back row and give one small nod. Enough. I shut the laptop and dropped my unit coin into my palm. The surface still held tiny nicks, each one a time I took the straight path through weather. I closed my hand. In the dark, the sound of metal against skin was a greeting. No fireworks, no soundtrack, only a yellow hallway light and ordinary breath. My story had come full circle. The rest was living and knowing when to keep quiet.